Okay, we're going to look at how to find the first couple terms of a sequence given the definition for it. So I think we're going to do maybe the first four terms. So I'm going to put n equals 1, n equals 2, n equals 3, and n equals 4 across the top here. So our first one is a sub n is equal to 1 over 2 to the n. So 1 over 2 to the n is our f of n. There's our function. So if n is 1, we get a1 is equal to 1 over 2 to the first. If n is 2, I get a2 is equal to 1 over 2 squared, which is a fourth. When n is 3, I have a3 is 1 over 2 cubed, so 1 over 8. And when n is 4, I get a4, so my fourth term is 1 over 2 to the fourth, or 1/16. Okay, so for this sequence, our first four terms are 1/2, a fourth, an eighth, and then a 16th. All right, so let's look at the next one. So our next sequence is defined as n times n plus 1 over 2. So we're going to start with n equals 1. So I have a1, my first term, is going to be 1 times 1 plus 1 over 2. So that's going to be 1 times 2 over 2. So that's going to simplify down to just be 1. a2, my second term, is going to be 2 times 2 plus 1 over 2. So that gives me 2 times 3 over 2. So my second term is a 3. My third term here, so a3, that's when n is 3, gives me 3 times 3 plus 1 over 2. So that's going to give me 3 times 4 over 2. So that's going to be 12 over 2, which is 6. Okay, so my third term is a 6. And then my fourth term, so a4, is going to be 4 times 4 plus 1, all over 2. So I get 4 times 5 over 2, so that's 20 over 2, which is 10. So my first four terms here are going to be 1, 3, 6, and then 10. Right, and then one more sequence here. So I have negative 1 to the n times n. So when n is 1, I have a1, and that's going to be equal to negative 1 to the first times 1. So negative 1 to the first is just negative 1. So this is going to be equal to negative 1. When n is 2, I get a2. So that's going to be negative 1 squared times 2. So negative 1 times negative 1 is going to give me a positive 1. So I get a positive 2 for my second term. a3 is going to be negative 1 cubed times 3. So that's negative 1 times negative 1 times negative 1. So that gives me a negative 3 is my third term. And then my fourth term, a4, is when n is equal to 4. So I get negative 1 to the fourth times 4. So that's going to become positive. So I get just a 4 here. So my four terms for this last sequence are negative 1, 2, negative 3, 4. And then all of these sequences keep going. We just did the first four terms, but these are infinite sequences. So you would use n equals 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on to get all of those terms.